The room was stark, lit by a single overhead bulb that cast harsh shadows on the walls. Two detectives, Miller and Grant, sat across from a young man slouched in his chair. His hoodie was damp with sweat, and his fingers drummed nervously on the metal table. His name was Caleb Parker, the sole survivor, or so it seemed, of the mysterious disappearance of his 5 friends. Miller leaned forward, her sharp eyes pinning Caleb in place. "Start from the beginning," she said, her voice low and controlled. "We're not buying this carnival nonsense. Your friends are missing, and you're the last person who saw them alive." Caleb swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. I told you it wasn't my fault. None of it was." "Then whose fault was it?" Grant asked, his tone gruffer. 5 kids vanish, and you come back looking like you've seen a ghost. You think we're going to believe you had nothing to do with it?" Caleb's hands clenched into fists. "You don't understand. It wasn't normal. None of it was. It was the twisted carnival." Miller exchanged a glance with Grant, skepticism clear on her face. "The twisted carnival," she repeated flatly. "Enlighten us." Caleb exhaled shakily, his eyes darting to the door as if calculating his chances of escape. "We were in the woods," he began reluctantly. "Last night of high school, you know. We just wanted to hang out, drink a little, have some fun before everything changed. Paige, she was the new girl. She said she heard music." He paused, his gaze distant, and Miller leaned forward. "What kind of music?" "It was faint at first," Caleb said, his voice softening. "A melody, like a music box, but twisted. It didn't sound right. The notes were off, like they didn't belong together, but they pulled at you, made you want to follow. Paige did. She just got up and started walking toward it. We tried to call her back, but she didn't even turn around." "And you followed her?" Grant asked. Caleb nodded. "We didn't want her going off alone. She was new, you know. We barely knew her, but it didn't feel right leaving her. So we grabbed our stuff and went after her. That's when we saw it." "The carnival?" Miller prompted. "Yeah." Caleb's eyes widened, as if seeing it again in his mind. "It was just there, like it had always been there, but we hadn't noticed it before. The lights were bright, but not normal colors. Greens and purples that hurt your eyes if you stared too long. The rides moved, but there was no sound. No engines, no gears. Just silence, except for the music." Grant frowned. "And you didn't think to turn back?" "We tried." Caleb's voice cracked. "We turned around, but the path was gone. It was just trees. Endless trees. The only way forward was the carnival." Miller tapped her pen against her notebook. "So you went in?" Caleb nodded reluctantly. "There was this thing waiting for us at the gate. It looked like a person at first, but when it stepped into the light..." He shuddered. Its face was wrong, stretched, like someone had pulled the skin too tight. Its eyes glowed, and it had this grin, this horrible, toothy grin. "What did it say?" Miller asked.
"Welcome.
"It welcomed us,"
One and all
Caleb
to the
whispered,
twisted
his
carnival.
voice trembling. "Said we were honored guests, and that we had to play, survive the rides, earn tickets, and we could buy our freedom. But if we didn't..." He trailed off, his breath hitching. "If you didn't," Grant pressed. "We'd become part of the carnival," Caleb finished, his voice barely audible. "It said we'd join the family." The detectives exchanged a glance, their skepticism wavering. "What happened next?" Miller asked. Caleb's hands clenched into fists on the table. The others didn't believe it at first. They thought it was some elaborate prank. But then the ride started. He closed his eyes, the memories flashing behind his lids. Ethan went first. He got on the Ferris wheel. It looked normal at first, but when it started moving, it changed. The cars weren't cars anymore. They were mouths, teeth. It swallowed him whole. "You saw this?" Grant asked, his voice tight. Caleb nodded, tears streaming down his face. "We all did. We tried to run, but the ringmaster appeared again. He told us we had to keep going, that the only way out was to survive." "And the others?" Miller asked gently. "Nora tried the carousel," Caleb said, his voice breaking. "It was beautiful at first. The horses were gold and silver, but when it started moving, they changed. Their eyes turned black, and their mouths opened, full of fangs. She couldn't get off." He wiped at his face with his sleeve, his hands shaking. Paige figured it out. She started playing smart, picking the rides that seemed the least dangerous. She earned tickets, enough to get out. But she didn't help us. She didn't even look back. "And you?" Miller asked. "How did you get out?"